Well, winter has definitely arrived here in Portland, and yet the show must go on. Okay, maybe the show might go on. And here I am. Made it! Okay. Coach Church back and making videos once more. Why won't my husband stop watching porn? Now, most of the people who reach out to me are men, and they're usually trying to recover from their own porn-induced erectile dysfunction or other sexual dysfunctions, or they're trying to quit pornography for other reasons, like saving their relationship. But I also get female porn addicts and women who are partners of porn addicts and are incredibly distraught about it. A lot of wives out there who just don't understand why their husband can't stop watching porn, often after he's said that he wants to stop watching porn and it's not that important to him. He just can't seem to stop. And that is indicative of an addiction. So today, I'm going to go through 3 different women and their emails to me who contacted me and try to give you all a picture of what this usually looks like in a marriage where it's become a problem and what the wife or the partner of the porn addict can do to support their partner and when to recognize that it's just not working. So without further ado, let's get started. This first woman, let's call her Anna. She says, I'm writing to you because even though I've studied all the important and helpful websites about this problem, there are still some unanswered questions for me. My partner and I are both in our 30s, and apart from this issue, we are very happy together. After 1.5 years of rarely having sex with my partner, we've been together for over 2 years now, our sex life has died completely. A few days ago, he confessed to me that he had been masturbating to porn very heavily over the last few months, and that he is now trying to get away from it. He says that his libido has been very low for some time now, as if I hadn't known, and that he is now in a phase that what I now know is called the flatline, and has lost all interest in all sexual contact and doesn't even feel like masturbating. So, to all the men out there who are in long-term relationships, husbands of wives, who have a sex life that's died out, if you're consistently masturbating to pornography, this is your wake-up call that might be one of the causes, probably the cause. Consistent use of internet porn conditions us to be aroused by a screen, by that endless seeking of novel content, opening multiple tabs and finding new porn stars and new genres to get off to. Often, some people fixate on one genre or one porn star, but whatever your activity is, your preferred sexual activity online is, you're conditioning yourself to the screen and away from real-life intimacy. Now, there certainly are people out there and couples out there who use porn occasionally, and it doesn't get in the way of their sex lives, their romantic relationships. They still have fulfilling, happy, healthy lives, and that's fine. But for those of you out there who have developed problematic usage, this video is for you. And those husbands out there who are no longer excited by their wives, it's probably not just because it's been, 2 years or a year and the sex life is dying out. That shouldn't happen. That's because you're using too much internet porn, most likely. And in this relationship, assuredly, that's the case. The flatline. She mentioned the flatline, and that is a very common period in recovery. After quitting using pornography, often a guy will fall into what's called a flatline, in which he feels very little sexual desire, his libido is very low, He even might have lessened physical sensation in his penis. It might get smaller than usual. It might feel like it's shriveled up and dead. And this is normal. And we don't fully understand why this happens during recovery yet, but my best theory is that, the body recognizes that it needs time to heal itself and to recover from the overstimulation it has had for so many years with internet pornography. And this period allows your body that time to rest and recover. And usually once people come out of the flatline, they feel better than they have in a long time. So don't be disheartened by the flatline. I think he has been using porn to masturbate to ever since he was a teenager because he got a computer with an internet connection quite early. However, I'm not sure whether this kind of sexual development has caused any problems in his former relationships. He tells me that sometimes he didn't masturbate to porn for a week, but never longer than that. Before he decided to stop, there were weeks when he PMO'd, porn, masturbation, orgasm, basically every day. Now, it might not have been such a problem in his past relationships. Maybe with each relationship, he is able to perform during that honeymoon period, but after a while, maybe he starts using more pornography in the relationship because he craves that newness, that novelty that he can always get with internet porn. And maybe that's why after half of a year with you, your sex life kind of died out. And maybe he didn't have relationships long enough in the past for that to happen. I don't know. When we did have sex, I noticed that he always had a hard time having an orgasm and that he had to take matters into his own hands at some point, literally, and make himself come. I always watched closely because I wanted to know how to give him that kind of pleasure, but it seemed more like a struggle to me. And I noticed that he was always gripping his penis very hard, harder than I would ever do, because I didn't want to hurt him. At the end, the only way he was able to achieve an orgasm was when I would give him some sort of a show. I remember trying to behave like the girls in the clips do, because I already had the feeling that that was what he needed. This was probably the wrong thing to do, but I assumed that at that point I couldn't have made a difference anyway. So it sounds like your husband has conditioned himself to be a voyeur, to watch and stimulate himself, and he's desensitized himself over years of using internet porn to the point where it's very difficult for him to achieve climax, and he can only do so under the conditions that he's used to, watching something stimulating and then stimulating himself with his hand. And a lot of guys out there probably think, well, I'm just not as young as I used to be, I'm not as sensitive, and I need what I need. And in your young 30s, that absolutely should not be the case. You should still be sensitive and horny enough to not need your own hand to reach orgasm. Reaching orgasm for most guys shouldn't be a difficult thing. It was for me for a long time with partners. But after recovering for long enough, staying away from porn and masturbation, but most particularly porn, it's not a problem for me anymore. And I used to feel impossible sometimes to reach orgasm during sex. But once you recover, there's so much to look forward to. Sex becomes such a more magnificent experience than using porn ever was. I can promise you that. So if you show your husband this video, I'm talking to you right now, you can have wonderful, satisfying, magnificent sex with your wife. And it doesn't have to be second to the pleasure that you get from porn. It will be so much more than porn could ever give you once you're away from porn for long enough to resensitize and fully appreciate the experience of actual intimacy and sexual connection with your wife. There's a lot to look forward to once you quit porn, trust me. As for you trying to give him a show and live up to what he sees in porn, that is a game you will never win. Porn is such a different type of stimulus than real sex. Once someone has conditioned himself to that endless novelty of internet porn, there's nothing one woman can do to live up to that. Nothing. Because you can't be 40, 50, 200 different attractive women. You can't change what you're doing at an instant's notice. You can't be pornography, and you shouldn't be trying to. And he shouldn't expect you to be. Our second woman, let's call her Amy. She says, "Hi, you made a video about PIED. porn-induced erectile dysfunction. I'm just curious on your opinion of what I could possibly do about my situation. I'm going to be very detailed here, so just bear with me. The reason I'm asking this is because you seemed very open and tender-hearted in your video, so I just feel like I can ask you this. I'm glad. I think that we should be open and willing to communicate honestly about these subjects, because in this country, especially the United States, we're very closed-minded about talking about sex. I mean, sex is everywhere. It's in our advertisements, it's in our media, our video games, our magazines, but it's not in our conversations in a serious way. We don't actually speak honestly about what we're feeling and our honest questions about sex and intimacy. We don't talk about that very much, and I'd like to change that. I'd like to be a part of that change. So I'm glad that you feel like you can be open and honest with me. Before we got together recently, my husband spent the last almost 10 years dorking off to porn. His porn habits did get kinda extreme. He developed a foot fetish, though I'm not complaining on that part. He always searches for femdom, anything to do with feet, mistresses, etc. He says that he doesn't like the really hard stuff, but from what I have seen on his search history, it's pretty bad in my opinion, though I think all of it is bad. Anyway, he searches this shit like anywhere from 2 to 3 times a day for anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour, from what I can tell. Many guys and girls who use pornography over a long period of time, they grow tolerant to what they're using. It's like an alcoholic who started being able to get a good buzz after 1 or 2 beers. Now that doesn't do anything for them, and they have to drink a fifth of hard liquor in order to really feel like they're getting the same level of stimulation that they used to with just a couple of beers. Drug users might start using more of their preferred drug or seek out stronger drugs to reach that same high that they're chasing from when they first started using. Porn users, like myself and many others, we seek out more extreme content, more shocking and novel content, new porn stars, new situations, scenarios, fetishes, and we glom onto whatever it is that provides us with the highest kick of stimulation. This works because novelty is something we're driven, we're hardwired to seek, and also strong emotions like shock and surprise, anxiety, when paired with arousal, can actually increase the level of that arousal, increases activity in the reward center and circuit of our brain. And when this happens, we can override that desensitization, that tolerance, and reach that point where we're aroused enough to get turned on and reach orgasm. So a lot of people start to develop interests sexually in fetishes that they never had before and never would have developed probably if they had not used pornography. It's not that we are discovering our true sexuality by delving deeper and deeper into pornography. We are escalating, and our sexuality is being conditioned and molded by the pornography that we're using. So if he developed a foot fetish or a fetish for femdom after using porn for a long period of time, it's likely that once he quits using porn, his sexual tastes will return back to what they used to be. At least become more vanilla. He might always have some interest in that sort of thing, but it shouldn't be something that he needs in the future. And that's what I find with a lot of people I work with and my own personal experience. For me, it wasn't feet and femdom, but regardless, he won't really know what he actually appreciates and desires sexually until he's been off porn for a long period of time and experimented in real life. Okay, battery died. Trying this again inside. He thinks he has to slowly come off of it instead of just stopping cold turkey. I know it's because he can't control it and doesn't want to. That's very insightful of you, because anyone who has recognized that porn has caused a path of destruction in their life, causing sexual dysfunctions or sabotaging an important relationship like a husband's with his wife, it's necessary to recognize that porn is incompatible with a healthy, happy life. And that's period, full stop. I'm not saying that's true for everyone out there, it's certainly not. But in the attempt to try to reach a middle ground, only use porn once a week, a few times a month, I find that the overwhelming majority of cases, that just doesn't work, because addicts people who have developed PIED usually have reached level of addiction as well. Addicts have very little ability to control their usage once they've started down that path. Once they've opened the door to using, it becomes so easy to binge, to go back into previous habits, and that just leads to a return of the PIED and the problems that have plagued your relationship since its beginning. So trying to come off of it slowly, I find, is just a tactic that the addicted brain uses. It's a rationale that the addicted part of the brain tells us is a good idea, but it's really just an excuse to keep going. I, of course, blame myself. You know, the whole not good enough, not pretty enough, not skinny enough, etc. Because in my rationale, if I was good enough, he wouldn't even think about looking at that stuff. That is probably the most common statement I hear from partners of porn addicts. Just like the last woman we talked about, Amy here, feels like she has to try to live up to the standard that porn sets. And that's not something that any real woman can live up to. It's not something she should try to live up to. But that's how a lot of guys who use porn make their partners feel. They make them feel like they're not good enough, they're not sexy enough, they're not enough in some way. So they try to live up to some standard that they think will satisfy their partner, and that never leads to happiness for either one. Trust me, I've seen it attempted enough times to know that it never leads to true satisfaction or a true, loving, open, honest, satisfying relationship. Ever since I have known him, he has had a problem just getting hard with me. Now, granted, he is 50 years old now. Though he is in amazing shape and he works out every day, I feed him well, whole organic food, etc. I seriously think it's the freaking porn. It makes the most sense. But he gets like half erections where it's hard enough to get it in, but it's still soft so that it bends in the middle. I'm sure you know what I mean. And he tells me he comes, but that is seriously hard to believe. Can a guy come without being hard? And he comes very early. Now, most people take it for granted that as a man ages, his erections will be getting weaker. And that's often the case, especially with someone who's not in good shape, who doesn't take care of themselves. They have clogged arteries and they have impeded blood flow, which certainly affects blood flow to the penis. But for a lot of guys who think that they're just getting older and their erections aren't working as well because of that reason, it's really because of the porn. And I think you're right. You seriously think it's the freaking porn. I'm in agreement with you. Now, can a guy come without being hard? Yes, he can. I work with a lot of guys who have gotten to the point where they can't achieve a full erection even with porn, but they push through to get to orgasm anyway. And so they reach climax without actually ever reaching 100% erectile strength. So they train their bodies to climax without getting fully hard. And that can extend to real sex as well. So it's possible that he's actually having an orgasm without being fully hard with you. It's also possible that he's saying that he has had an orgasm. He's faking it because he feels like he's about to lose his erection, or he doesn't think he can actually get there, but he doesn't want you to feel like it's your fault, or that he doesn't want to make you feel bad about it. One of the biggest things he wants from the porn is the talking. When the woman talks, I try to do that crap, but I just suck at it, and it doesn't do anything for him. Plus, it's very difficult for me to talk while I am being pleasured, because if I focus on him, he will just come, and then I am left not finished, though he always takes care of that by other means. But still, I want to be able to please him, and he just seems not to be able to stay away from the porn. I tried to get him to watch these PIED videos and read some of the studies, and he kind of looks over them and says, yeah, I get it, it's bad for you, and that's it. He wants to gradually get off of it, which is just an excuse to continue looking at it, in her words. He knows that it is making it so he can't get hard and properly pleasure us both, but it won't stop him. Why is that? Doesn't that just seem like I am not enough for him, or is that just all in my head? Sorry this is so long, but if you have any possible help you could send my way, it would be greatly appreciated. I can't stay in a relationship like this where my husband can't stop looking at porn, and I have literally no one to speak to about this because it's just too embarrassing. Now, this is a question like, how can I best support my partner? How can I best bring him around to where he realizes and recognizes that porn is harmful to our relationship and wants to quit for himself? And that is, I'm not going to lie, very difficult to do. It's very difficult to change somebody else other than yourself. It's difficult enough to change ourselves, but to try to change our loved ones can sometimes seem damn near impossible. All we can do is express our truth, speak to him honestly about how you're feeling about all this and your hopes and your dreams for where you two can go together in the future. Share with him resources like you've been doing. Continue to show him and watch with him things like Gary Wilson's TED Talk, The Great Porn Experiment, my videos, and other studies and articles that are coming out about how porn can have this impact on people. And maybe one of them will click with him. Maybe at some point he'll reach that aha moment where he realizes that this isn't really what's good for him. This isn't really what he wants. Because he might be in a place right now where porn has wired him to think that he wants that endless novelty that porn provides. But at some point, I really hope, because I reached it and many of the people I work with have reached it, that he'll reach a point where he realizes what he really wants is right in front of him. It's a real intimate human connection. It's not this fantasy that porn provides, but that fantasy is never going to result in satisfaction. That fantasy of endless sexual variety and always seeking for something new and more interesting, more stimulating. Now, at some point, if he doesn't reach this moment, you might have to accept that porn is part of your relationship and it's not going to change. If he gives you every indication that he's not going to quit, you got to start believing him on that, and you have to be able to set boundaries for yourself. Is that something you're willing to accept long-term in your relationship? If so, go ahead. If not, well, cross that bridge when you come to it. But as for your last comment, I have literally no one to speak to about this because it's just too embarrassing. That is, unfortunately, one of the most damaging beliefs that a lot of people have, is that they're all alone, they're isolated, they can't speak to anyone about what's going on, whether they're the partner of a porn addict or a porn addict himself. And that's because addiction thrives in isolation and secrecy. And opening up those walls, being able to let people in and ask for help or just ask for someone to listen, that is half the battle right there. I hope that you can find someone like a friend, a family member to open up to, and I think you'll see that they don't cast you out for these problems you're having in your relationship. They don't judge you harshly for it. Most people will admire the courage you had in telling them about this personal problem, because most people are holding on to something like this. Often it's about something sexual because it's so hard for us to talk about sex. And they will admire you for having the courage that they have not yet had. And who knows, maybe they'll even open up to you about something that's going on in their lives. But as long as we all keep these secrets, we all keep these walls up, we're all going to have to suffer in silence and isolation. So I really hope that you can find someone to talk to. If there's no one in your immediate life, like your friends or your family, that you're comfortable doing so with, you can find an S-Anon group. It's a group for partners or family members or relatives of sex addicts or porn addicts. And it's just a space where you can talk and hear other people's stories and tell your own story without being judged. And it can be really helpful. Our last lady, Wanda, let's call her, has written to me a few times. She says, "Hi Noah, I've been married for 11 years. My husband is addicted to porn, and I'm so tired of trying to help him. He currently decided on his own to get some psychiatric help, and they want to test him for ADHD and depression. I'm emailing you to ask if you think I should continue to wait for my husband, or should I call it quits? I've been getting psychiatry myself, and whenever I find out that he is surfing, I keep getting more hurt. I love this man, and I see that he is changing slowly, but I'm scared that this will escalate into something bigger, since he has not changed in 11 years. I'm going to be honest. I got upset today and blocked his internet use from the phone. Am I wrong for doing that? Thank you for your time and reading this message. I'm honored. Please help me with your wise advice. Okay. Well, I hope I can be wise for you. But really, I'm just a guy who has dealt with this in my own life and my own relationships, and has seen a lot of other relationships go through this as well. So I know what doesn't work most of the time, and I know what can work. Now, as for whether you should call it quits, I can't be one to help you make that decision, really. I don't think that, from what you told me in this first message, that there's no hope left. If the fact that he sought actual psychiatric help and opened up to someone else about his problem, that's a huge step forward. So I don't think it's time yet to say that he's never going to change. But 11 years is a long time, and this might always be something that he struggles with to some degree. And you have to be prepared to accept that. Not accept that this is going to be a regular part of his life, that he's always using porn, but accept that part of him is addicted and will always be addicted. And even if he's clean for years, he might still sometimes struggle with temptation. But you can't be at the same time the one who is always there, being his therapist, being his buddy, because you're his wife. And there should be other people in his life to fulfill those roles. If he crosses a boundary that you two have set, he should be honest with you about it, and you should be able to talk about that. But he shouldn't have to come to you with every tempting thought that has crossed his mind. He should have someone else in his life, a friend, an accountability partner, he can talk to about that. Or a 12-step group like Sexaholics Anonymous. A lot of the people in those groups now are struggling with porn as well as, affairs and other sexual activities. Because you're directly hurt by his actions. So it's hard for him to feel safe talking to you, probably, about his urges and his temptations and his difficulties all the time, because he doesn't want to hurt you by talking to you about these things, and he doesn't want to make you angry. So he does need someone else in his life, not just a therapist that he sees twice a month, but someone, a friend, an accountability partner that he can talk to about these things. So I encourage you to encourage him to find someone like that, someone you both trust to be able to help him with this problem. About a month ago, this is a following message, after a big scare on his phone, long story, he then decided to get help from a therapist who specializes in porn addiction behavior. It's been about 2.5 months that my husband has been seeing this therapist. This last Friday that just passed, I got my hair done and came home earlier than expected. I think I know where this is going. And found my husband in the room with the family tablet looking at porn. I got so upset and frustrated that I got the tablet and I broke it. Was that right for me to do? At the moment, I was upset, and then after, when I was thinking about it, I knew that it should have been his choice to break, throw away, or stop doing that. Whether it was right or wrong, I'm not going to say. I think it was badass. Maybe it showed him how important this is to you, and maybe that will be sort of a wake-up call for your husband. But hopefully he'll get to the point where he's willing to make that choice for himself, yes. On another subject, I remember his telling me after a session with his therapist, he realized that he really wants to stop for himself. His actions kind of show me, for instance, he goes to the gym once or twice a week by himself. Sometimes I go with him. And he has been working on creative projects. I've been seeing him struggle to try and help himself. But then at the same time, his therapist insisted that he should go to an SA meeting since we can only afford 2 sessions a month, and he has not tried. The therapist also tried giving him some websites and even suggested watching your videos, and he has not. So the thing about SA, Sexaholics Anonymous, that differentiates it from some of the other 12-step S groups like Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, Sex Addicts Anonymous, Sexual Compulsives Anonymous, is that they're more hardline about proper sexual behavior. They believe that the only acceptable sexual behavior is between a man and a woman inside of a marriage, And since you're a man and a woman inside of a marriage, that might line up for you. But a lot of people find that they fit better with the mores of the other 12-step S groups. Today I had a talk with my husband, and he told me that he feels stuck because I have parental control on my laptop and on my computer. He feels less of a man. I feel bad, but I don't know if what I'm doing is right or wrong, because I don't want the kids coming across any of this porn or getting a virus on my laptop that I use mostly for college. Right now, he currently has a flip phone because of the big scare we had that I mentioned in the beginning of this email. Long story short, I was looking at an app on his phone called Let Go. All of a sudden, the phone takes a picture of my face and has a list of personal numbers of his mom, dad, brothers, etc., and threatened to hack their phones until he paid money. I was freaked out. I was thinking, what if one of my kids were on his phone and it took a picture of their face? In addition, it had a list of the porn sites that he went on. There are some dangers like this now in the modern age. There's things called ransomware that are, black hat software that hijacks your device and might take a picture of your face and have a log of the porn websites that you visited and use that to blackmail you for money. This is some scary shit out there right now. And I'm not saying that's going to happen to everyone who watches porn, but it's another possibility that faces people who choose to engage in activities like watching porn for some people that they wouldn't want other people to know about. People who have secret parts of their lives that are shameful to them are always going to be vulnerable to things like this. And trust me, it feels so much better to be open and not have those secret parts of your life. Be willing to share everything about yourself with the people you love and not be ashamed of anything. It's remarkably freeing. And if you can get to that place, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. Noah Church, please, 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 can you give me and my husband your honest opinion and advice about this situation? And then a third message, a couple months later. Since my last email, things have changed. He came out last month and told me all the devices he has been using in order to get the porn he was used to watching. He told me that he would love for me to change the passwords on those devices. With that being said, I'm extremely relieved, but yet scared at the same time, because it was something I never thought he would do. After he told me his secrets, he explained to me that he wanted to change for himself. And he wanted to be open with me because that's the only thing that would help. Since then, I've been noticing he has been getting irritable, tired, aggravated, and sluggish. His therapist told him that he needs to go through the reboot stage. Well, I think it's impressive that you found a therapist who knows what rebooting is. That's a good sign right there. It's weird because the days after he had told me his secrets, he was super stoked, fully motivated, went to the gym, etc. After a few weeks, his highs are now becoming his lows. I was on Hulu the other night, and I found that he was watching the LGBT category films, the girl-on-girl stuff with nudity. I told him about it, and he got offended. I explained to him that it hurt me, and I was worried that maybe having a Hulu account might not be the best thing while he's trying to stay positive. I told him I would not delete it. That is what I would have done in the past. Like you already know, we have been married almost 12 years, and I am so tired. Is there any advice you can give me that I can do to help him and help myself now that we have come this far? After I started seeing him change for the better, I started to put my guard down. And after the Hulu incident, I'm putting my guard up again. It's important to try to recognize what's going on in his head, because it's probably not that he's going around behind your back all the time using porn again. It's that the addicted brain, the addicted part of ourselves, is very good at rationalizing. And he might have thought, I'm not going to watch porn tonight. I'm just going to go on Hulu and see what's on there. There's no porn on Hulu, so there's no way I can get in trouble or cross any lines going on Hulu. And then he sees this film that he thinks, it's artful. It's not like the porn I used to watch. And so he watches it. But not recognizing that any sexual stimulation that he's seeking out from a screen is leading him down the path of relapse. It's a slippery slope for porn addicts. And at some point, he should realize that that is the case and that he should be staying away from all such erotic stimulation through the medium of a screen. Now, he might not realize this yet, and it doesn't mean that he won't. There's going to be slips like this throughout the journey, and that's natural. He might relapse. He might slip up again like this. That doesn't mean that he's never going to recover. And the only real failure in these incidents is a failure to learn from them. Learn that, maybe watching movies like this on Hulu when I'm alone, that's not okay. And when I hear myself rationalizing that in the future, I'll be able to recognize, no, this is the voice of the addicted part of myself. And if he can learn that, then that's progress. And this doesn't have to be a failure. Now, as for the ups and downs, it's very common to feel a surge of passion and excitement for the future, for the changes that are happening in one's life as they commit to not use porn anymore and perhaps share their story and their secrets with someone in their life like your husband did with you. And this might last for a few days, a couple of weeks, a month. And during this time, staying away from porn is probably going to feel pretty easy because he feels good. It's after that initial honeymoon period ends where you start just to feel a little bit aimless, depressed, anxious, that the porn starts calling out to him again as something that he's always been able to rely on to make himself feel better. Now, there are going to be these ups and downs, these peaks and valleys throughout the journey. But as time goes on, if he's able to stay away from the porn, these will get more regular, where the peaks aren't quite so high and the valleys aren't quite so low, and he'll just be living life. And this is the point where I hope that you guys can make it to, because that's where it's not going to be something that you have to think about all the time. You won't have to worry so much about, what is my husband doing when I'm not home? He won't have to struggle with so many urges day to day. And he's always going to be an addict if he's an addict now. He's always going to be vulnerable to relapse and to going back into his old patterns. But as time goes on, those urges, they might not get weaker, but he gets stronger. And they won't be plaguing him so much like they have done for the last however long he's been trying to recover. So there's a lot of hope for the future. You can absolutely build up the trust again and have a satisfying, successful, romantic relationship with your husband. It's going to take time, and you have to accept that once an addict, always an addict. There's always going to be a part of your husband that's addicted to porn. And what that means is that even after years of being clean, he might slip up again. He might have a relapse. He might have a slip like this thing with Hulu. And that doesn't mean that the progress meant nothing or that he's not committed to recovering or that he doesn't love you. It's just something that happens with addicts sometimes. Addicts can't trust themselves. They have ingrained this habit so deep within themselves that especially in times of emotional distress, depression, anxiety, loneliness, it can feel like you're another person, like you're just being taken over by this addiction, and the part of you that's rational and knows what's important is just gone. And I'm not trying to make excuses for the addicts. I'm just trying to prepare you for what being in a relationship with an addict can be like. But from what I've seen in your messages, your husband is making incremental changes. He's recognizing the negative effects of his behaviors. He's trying to do something about it. He's opened up to you and given you his passwords, asked for help. He's gone to a therapist who specializes in porn addiction. These are all great things. And as long as he continues to show that he's determined to fight this and get better, I think he deserves your support. But I absolutely understand you're being tired. I'm sure you're suffering with a lot of hurt from the lies that he's told you and the times that he's violated your trust, made commitments that he didn't keep. And that is a very common effect of addiction among families and relationships, friendships. Addicts aren't trustworthy. And that's a really shitty thing because you're probably dealing with a lot of betrayal trauma. And you should seek support for yourself. Take care of yourself. Find people you can confide in. Friends, family members, therapists. There are online support communities that I recommend all the time that are a great way to post anonymously, get things off your chest, receive some advice, see other people's stories. But there's really no replacement for real-life, human-to-human support. So find people you can trust with those sensitive parts of your life And your husband should find those people as well. Accountability partner, therapist, online support groups, real-life support groups, etc. Now this has been an overview, a brief overview, of 3 women's stories and how porn has affected their marriages and their relationships. That's all it is an overview. I've gone over, a few of the things that are common to men in pornography addiction and are common to women who are struggling with partners who are addicted to porn. But to learn more, I'm going to link to some resources in the description below, including a book that I really like called Love You, Hate the Porn, about dealing with a porn addiction in a relationship. And read my book as well. It's available for free for people who subscribe to my newsletter. You can learn all about how pornography affects the brain and relationships and us as a culture. Read other people's recovery stories in my book, and you'll find that you resonate with them, I'm sure, because all of us is much less unique in this struggle than we think, which means that we're much less alone than we think. We have a community of people around us who can help us recover, and I hope that lifts a weight off of your shoulders. So anyone out there who wants to get my personal help, you can find ways to do that on my website, addictedtointernetporn.com. I offer paid coaching sessions, phone, Skype, email, etc. I'd love to help you out. All right, rebooters, I hope you have a wonderful PMO-free day, and I'll see you next time. I hope you enjoyed that broadcast. If you'd like to see more, click the video on the left to find out if quitting porn could give you superpowers, and the video on the right to see my interview with Jessica Harris, recovered porn addict. Whatever you do, don't click the subscribe button. Reverse psychology.